Welcome to Fly on the Wall, a podcast where you have the opportunity to listen in on a live coaching conversation. Please make sure to like and subscribe. And now for today's episode.
How can I help you, man? What's going on? How can we dive into what's going on at the church or in your leadership?
Yes. So, we're loving what's going on, especially as COVID is kind of dissipating. And so we just really are setting our mind towards healthy growth within the church.
Yeah.
Which kind of segues me into this first question, because I hear a lot of times there's almost like this idea that having a growth mindset as a pastor is not okay. It's not right. And so I'd love for you to kind of speak to why that is biblical, why it's good for pastors and ministry leaders to have a mindset for growth.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this question. I'll flip it back over to you. Those that don't have a growth mindset, is it primarily in the area of numerical growth where they don't have that mindset?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well. First of all, let's talk about why people don't have a growth mindset.
Right.
I do think that what seems to happen, first of all, I think it is right to have it. Jesus left the 99 to find the one. He
Right.
cares about the lost. In Luke 15, we've got the lost coin, the lost sheep, and the lost son. So clearly he cares about the lost. Clearly he wants his church to grow. Clearly he wants people to come home. Right. I do think, let's first talk about why people don't, because if someone's listening here, maybe they could be challenged in that. And I'm not saying this is for everybody, because this is going to sound a little bit critical, but when someone's not growing, they want to attack the growth mindset. Right. When someone doesn't know how to grow their church, they want to attack the growth mindset. When someone's outpacing them in their friendship network or across town, they want to criticize. I think that we have a tendency to criticize what we don't know and what we don't understand. Right. And so one way to put down growth is to under spiritualize what that person's doing and over spiritualize what we're doing.
Right.
Well, let me tell you why they're growing, because, they don't really preach the gospel. I mean, we care about disciples around here.
They water it down.
They water it down. And I think we tend to do that from a position of insecurity. And I think if someone would just stop and be self-aware for a moment and ask tough questions. Why do I have an anti-growth mindset? Well, because I'm insecure, because I can't figure out how to get things to grow. Because it's easier to just say we're about discipleship and not growth, and it's us four and no more.
Right.
It's easier for me to discredit someone else in order to elevate myself. And one thing I always tell people is you don't have to cause someone else to lose in order for you to win. You don't have to put down someone else or whatever. But I think we do that from insecurity. I think if we do that from a lack of knowledge, we do that from it's an easier to say. And I do think that those that have an anti-growth mindset have to stop and say, is this really the right mindset to have? What is the root of why I have this mindset? And then let's just look at Jesus. Luke 15, he leaves the 99 to find the one, as I said. I joked around at a conference recently. Someone asked me the same type of question, Vinny. And I said, if you have 4 kids, like you have 4 kids, and you go to Disneyland, you have a great day at Disneyland, and towards the end of the day, one of them ends up missing. You're like, oh my gosh, our kid's missing, our 8-year-old's missing, or whatever. You don't look at your wife and go, 3 out of 4 ain't bad. What do? I can tell you, if your kid is missing, you are going to get security, start calling 911. You're going to get them to shut down all the gates and don't let anybody leave, because your kid may still be in Disneyland. Like, you're going to go crazy to find the lost kid.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if our Father would feel any less about doing everything he can to find his lost kid.
Yeah, I love that.
And it's the heart of God. So I would say first, that I think we have to see why we don't have it. I don't think we can allow ourselves to get caught up in worried about someone else not having, worried that someone else is attacking our growth mindset, worried that someone's saying something to us, worried that someone's going to say it's watered down, worried that, I do think you need to have discipleship. I do think you need to have growth. I think people need to find Christ. People need to go from, unchurched to fully devoted. Like, all that needs to happen, but you can't get caught up in what someone else says and the way that they attack. I think you have to be really, really careful that I've often said that usually when you're criticizing someone's growth or someone's new idea, the person you're criticizing usually ends up becoming your coach, because they end up surpassing you, in a lot of areas. And finally, you're humble enough to come and ask some questions, hopefully. So I would stay the course with that. I think God wants us to grow, man. I think we got to figure that out. I think we got to wrestle with it. It's not the only thing we wrestle with in church, but it has to be one of the things we wrestle with.
I think it's so much easier to walk in doubt rather than faith. I think it takes faith to believe that God could use me to grow his church.
Right.
And so that's uncomfortable. It can be scary for some people. And so I think, as you're saying, man, it takes faith to walk in such a way to believe that God could use someone to grow his church. And it's really, I think, faith versus doubt.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's scary too. It's like proclaiming a miracle, casting a vision. Well, what if it doesn't happen? And what if it doesn't go, or what if it doesn't happen? Then do we have egg on our face? Like, oh boy, that didn't happen. Boy, you really heard from God on that one, and what if it doesn't happen? And so I do think that you're right. It has a lot to do with faith. And I do also, since you say the word doubt, I think there's a lot of pastors that doubt their leadership, that doubt that they can grow something. And that's why I always say, man, it's like, man, if you have that insecurity and that fear and that doubt, like you were just talking about, Vinny, you got to, as a pastor, you got to do a couple things. Number one, you're going to have to outgrow that doubt. You're going to have to come bigger than that doubt. You're going to have to get the help you need, the coaching you need, the development you need. You're going to have to get the ideas you need, the concepts you need. Pride comes before a fall.
Right.
In 2019, we lost 10,000 churches in 1 year.
Wow.
Somewhere pride was there, mixed in there. We don't need it. We're good. We're fine the way we are. Okay. And then it just continues to, well, pride comes before a fall, not just the fall personally, but the fall as the organization called the church. And so you got to deal with that doubt, deal with that fear, and get the help that you need, and set out some goals, set out some ideas, believe God for some big things, and then create the strategy to go after it. Man, but God wants us to grow, because at the end of the day, he doesn't want to leave any kids behind. And I think no matter who we are, whether we are hyper kind of Pentecostal spiritual or not at all that way, but if we're all preaching the cross, we're all believers, there's one thing Jesus wants, and that's heaven to be crowded. Amen. And so, I think you're on the right track with that for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. So, hey, we have a growth mindset, and that's one of the things I've loved about your coaching, is that it removes excuses, and it gets down to the practical. How do we grow our church in a healthy way? Yeah. And so with that, when your church is growing, you have to start thinking about the team. Who do I have doing ministry alongside? And so what are some keys that you would say to building a ministry staff? Everywhere from like recruiting to the hiring process, the question, how to figure out who should be on your team and who shouldn't be on your team. I'd love for you to kind of coach me through that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think from staff to key leaders is kind of probably where we should focus. At least what I'm hearing you say, it's one thing if someone's a volunteer and they're helping take the offering, then that's one thing. But when you start getting up to anything where you're giving them influence, whether that's a leader of an influence over 8 volunteers or a staff member, there's a few things that I would say to it in no particular order. But there's a few things that I definitely would say to as you're looking at staff. One, I do think that First, I I think that you would look at, especially at the staff level, am I hiring a leader or am I hiring a doer?
Yeah.
Are they a gatherer? Are they a galvanizer? Do they know how to raise people up? When they walk in the room, do people naturally follow them? Do they have influence? One thing I always say is you hire leaders and you contract talent. Find leaders. Do they know how to lead? Do they know how to develop? That's a profile that you're looking for in that leader, in that staff member, especially a staff member. I would look at their ability to raise people up, their ability. I think a lot of times we look and think, oh, he'll be great for youth because all the kids like him. Right. Okay, that's good. But is he a leader or is she a leader? Do they know how to develop people? Do they know how to raise people up? Do they know how to develop teams? They know how to structure things. Like, yeah, the kids like them. That's great. But are they truly a leader at heart? Do they know how to raise up leaders? Another thing I would say is, are they teachable? Do they want to grow? Do they want to develop? Do they want to become more? Or are they satisfied in staying where they're at? So hiring, especially in the hiring, looking at people that can raise people up, people that are hungry to grow and develop. Are they teachable? I think people that have an uncommon winning attitude. I say uncommon because they're just positive. If you're ever looking at a staff member to hire, ask them about where they worked before. If they're quick to criticize, it's just a matter of time before they criticize you.
Right.
So watch their attitude, watch their toxicity of how they, kind of are negative towards other situations. But here's one thing I think that people need to do is, I think it's important to create a profile, especially at staff level or even a stipend level, like a profile, like who does that person need to be? And don't let desperation take over, because when desperation rises, the standard will follow. So you want to make sure that you are like, nope, this is who we're going after. This is the criteria that we're going after. The flip side of it is, and you didn't ask this, but I think it's important. I think it's important for you to have a document that says, what does it look like to work for Benny Green? That's so cool. If I work for you, if I'm on your staff, what does that mean? Do you expect emails returned in a day or in 1 day or in 1 hour? Do you expect, what kind of attitude do you expect? What is a pet peeve of yours? What is the thing that frustrates you? You may as well tell them up front rather than waiting 6 to 9 months for them to discover it.
Man, that's so good.
Just tell them up front. You want to really tick me off? Wait 4 days to return an email. You want to really get under my skin? Be late to all the meetings. Just tell them. What's funny to me is we wait for them to figure it out. Then they get in trouble. Then we have to have a harsh talk with them. Like, just tell them this is what we expect.
That's so good.
So that, I think, is an important, especially at the staff level. At the leadership level, that kind of tier 2 leader, I would say same thing. There's got to be a certain profile. They've got to have a certain uncommon attitude. They have to be teachable. They have to show loyalty to you, loyalty to the organization. I think those are important things too. On the back end of that is make sure that you have a clear pathway of how someone becomes a leader in the church.
Yeah, that's really good. And, bringing someone from maybe a volunteer leadership level to a paid staff level, what are some good things to kind of look at to be able to determine that they're ready for that jump? Yeah.
I think if you're going to go from volunteer all the way up to staff member, I think that you have to know that they have a track record that is greater than they're just faithful.
That's good.
For whatever reason, that becomes like this threshold of criteria for churches. Like, well, he's a faithful man. Yeah,
they show up to everything.
He shows up to everything. He loves you and he's faithful. And those are great qualities. Does he build teams? Does he know how to structure things? Can he think strategic? Does he know how to bring people together? Like those are does he know how to grow things from nothing to something? Like those are the kind of questions that you want to be asking, especially if they're going to go from volunteer to staff. Again, I think we put the umbrella of they're faithful, and that is a criteria. It is not the only criteria. And you got to make sure that you're looking and saying, man, asking all the other tough questions. Can they lead? Can they develop? Can they strategize? Can they do those things? Have they proven themselves? Okay, now here's the other thing. I think that in volunteer is sometimes I think volunteers that want to be on staff will present them this way. Well, if I just had more time, man, I could really develop teams.
Yeah.
I don't know. If you haven't developed teams at all, and it's not natural for you with the few hours you do give as a volunteer, you're probably not going to be able to do it with more hours.
Right.
I think money only makes you more of what you already are. And I think time only makes you more of what you already are.
That's right.
You're not raising up. You're like, well, the guy's a volunteer, and if he had more time, if he hasn't proven himself in some areas, I don't know if more time is going to fix that.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. So keep an eye on that, keep an eye on that. And then one more thing I would say is, and I say this a lot, but one of the greatest things you can do is your top 2, 3, 4 people. I wouldn't go past 4, but top 2 to 3, maybe 4 people. Here's you, and here's the 2, 3, 4 people around you. Just know this, Vinny. Most likely, outside of an act of the Almighty God, you won't go any higher than the 2 to 4 people that you surround yourself with.
Wow. You're
not going to go any higher. So if you're a sort of a medium to high level leader, you're a 7, but you got yourself surrounded by 2s, right. That's the problem. You gotta figure out, like, how do I just know in your head, I want to get the top 2, 3, 4 people around me that I can get, not just good people. I think we kind of justify when they're not that good, but just, it's like, I just want to get some great leaders around me. And, that's a whole different topic, but think about, how do I get great leaders around me? How do I get them to move to my city, where it's minus 100 in Vermont? No, how do I get people to come to my city and my church? People that move their life here, like, that want to serve with me. How do I become attractional and gravitational that people want to be around me? They want to. My vision is big. My excitement is big. I'm attractional. People want to be around me. Think about that kind of, because as you grow as a leader, you're gonna be more likely to attract higher level people. Always remember, you don't attract what you want. You attract what you are.
Yeah, that's good. Become
a higher level leader and become gravitational, and eventually more people will start coming around you. So think about that, with especially as your church grows, which, I think when we first met, you had 33 people in the church, and now you got a couple hundred people in the church. So clearly, God's done awesome things. You've been open to getting coaching and help, and as a result of the coaching and obviously the Lord's hand on all of it, it's grown. But as you continue to grow, those 2, 3, 4 people are going to be crucial.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
And, is there a natural process where as you, as the leader, grow, that those underneath you grow? Or is there some strategy and some things that we can do to help those that we're leading grow?
Yeah. Well, I do think to some degree, I think if we go up, they might go up a little bit with us. But we have to be intentional about taking people on the journey with us, grabbing top 3 or 4 people you and I've talked about, and creating a leadership circle. Am I going through a book with them? And when I'm done with that book, what's the next book? And when I'm done with that book, what's the next book? I think we have to be intentional about that. I am a huge fan of leadership circles. You and top 3 or 4 people, one of your other staff, 3 or 4 people, maybe one of your other staff or key leaders or whoever, 3 or 4 people. Like, I think it would be amazing for you to sit back at a church of a couple hundred and go, okay, at any given month, there's 25 people going through a leadership book.
That's great.
Now, that's not just going to, one book isn't going to automatically change everything. But what happens is you're depositing like water into a cup. You're depositing leadership. You're creating leadership conversations that'll happen. It's not going to happen overnight, but I don't think great leaders are made overnight. But you have to be intentional. It's remarkable to me how people are not that intentional about the thing that is one of the most important things in our church is leadership. Right. So how do I become a leader in your church, and how are you going to grow me? Well, you're going to join a leadership circle, and we're going to have leadership conversations. We go through books together. We talk about, and if you're going to take people through a book, always ask 2 questions. You know, if you read like chapters 1 and 2 and you come together and discuss it, what's the biggest thing you learned, and what are you going to do about it? What's the biggest thing you learned? So if you're doing a leadership circle, grab a book, talk about it for 30 or 40 months. What did you guys get out of chapters 1 and 2? So they come, they've read chapter 1 and 2. You meet at a coffee place. What did you guys get out of chapter 1 and 2? Talk about it for 30 or 40 minutes, and then go around the table. What's the biggest thing you learned, and what are you going to do about it? What's the biggest thing you learned? What do you do about it? And come back together, and 3 weeks later or whatever, 2 weeks later, talk about chapters 3 and 4. But you do that with 3 or 4 people. You got 4 or 5 other people doing that. You got 25 people talking about leadership and having leadership conversations. That's how you create a pathway to your question.
Really good.
You create a pathway for them to start growing, having leadership conversations. Because think about it, they're not getting that anywhere else.
Right.
Hey man, I drive a truck for a living, or I do inspections for a living for houses. They're not getting a book and their boss is taking time to go through a book with them. Like, they're not getting it anywhere else, but they're getting it from you guys. Find the greatest people you can, put them into your team, have your youth pastor do that, your children's person, one of your key board members, whatever, and start creating leadership circles, and you'll start seeing the levels start to go up because the conversation will change. And you can't withdraw leadership if you don't make a deposit of leadership every month.
Right.
So
that's really good.
Yeah. It's a system. It's just a simple idea. Take a book, go through it, but it's something, not just,
Absolutely.
I don't know. We just kind of ask people to be leaders. Like, but how are we growing them? Like, what are we doing?
Right.
So yeah, that's something. It's a good idea. It's simple. It's easy.
I love it.
Anybody can do it.
I love that.
Yeah.
So in order for a church to grow, people have to show up to church.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So, that's pretty brilliant thought there.
This is deep.
And so how do you create that momentum and keep it going, especially, coming out of COVID? What are some things that churches like ours here in Vermont, 200 people, what are some practical things that we can start doing in order to start generating that momentum, getting people to come to church again, and start growing?
Yeah. Well, a couple things on that. And I believe I've talked about anybody that's ever heard me talk has talked about it, whether it's on a fly on the wall podcast or in person, but choose engagement over attendance. Choose engagement
That's great.
over attendance. What does that mean? Hey, if you were to tell your team, we want to be 300 by the end of the year. Okay. So your staff goes, amen, Vinny. Yes, Pastor Vinny, you're the best. Then they all leave. What are they actually going to do about it?
Right.
I mean, really, what's your youth pastor what's a worship leader really going to do about, we're going to be at 300 by the end of the year? They're going to pray about it and cheerlead it. Like, what are they going to do? But if you look at them and go, in the next 90 days, we're all going to work hard, and you're going to get 5, you're going to get 5, you're going to get 5, you're going to get 5. We're going to get 25 new people involved in ministry in 90 days. And we're going to work hard at it. When that 90 days is up, you might end up with 20, or you might end up with 26. When that 90 days up, we're going to repeat it. When that 90 days up we're going to repeat it. And we are going to become a recruiting. I can't hold you accountable to, we're going to be 300 by the end of the year. That's an attendance goal. And I don't know how you hold someone accountable to that.
Right.
But an engagement goal, I can hold you accountable to that. If I was the pastor and you were an associate, I'd be like, all right, Vinny, so did you get it's week 3. We're right. I got 2. Okay, good. We're on track. You're supposed to get 5. Okay. Or we're in month 3 and you're like, I got 1. Like, well, what's going on? So I'm holding you accountable, and each of the staff accountable to get to that. that engagement over attendance does two things. Well, several things. It fills volunteer roles. It gets more people deeper into the water of the church. And your church grows statistically 2 people for every 1 person you get involved.
Wow.
So
Yep.
the attendance will automatically be impacted by the engagement goal. So
That's great.
you are looking at the number every week. There's no doubt. Every pastor does. But let the goal be engagement to the team. What that will give them is more volunteers, people deeper in the water of the church, and that will ultimately give us an attendance increase, because every 1 person gets involved, 2 people come to the church. Because why? Because they get more excited about it. They have more ownership. I'm a new person. I'm involved in my church now, and you're kind of excited about it. So there's a lot of wins that can come from that. But that would be one thing that I would say is probably the primary thing. I think some people, aren't going to come back. They've fallen away from the Lord. They probably will never say that, but they're not going to come back. And they're like, I watch it online, and I love online, but I'll probably get crucified for this next statement. I love online. I think everybody should go after it with everything they got. But I still think if you are physically able, you should be in the house of God. And I think you should be with other believers. There's no way that me sitting at my kitchen counter worshiping is the same experience when I'm with brothers and sisters in Christ. So we want to keep growing. So it is what it is. Whatever people always say, well, pre-pandemic, I'm like, well, that's over with. What's your church right now? Whatever it is, that's what it is. Now, how do we start growing engagement over attendance?
Yeah, that's really good. And, you bring up the online stuff and metaverse. You don't you don't have to spend a lot of time on this particular. I've got other questions, but man, it's a curiosity point for me. How much should a church invest or even be engaged in pursuing that realm of things, the metaverse?
Yeah, you're talking about just the online. When you're talking about, just make sure I'm specifically online church.
Yeah, online church, but then, so online church, and then, you've got the Oculus, and Facebook's coming up with this whole thing, and there's not a lot of pastors yet, I don't think, building online church experiences like that, maybe because of a lack of infrastructure.
Probably.
But I'm just curious to see, you've got multiple campuses. What do you think about that?
Well, what I think is, I think you do have to have a good online presence. I think that there are some people that come along that are tech savvy, that are very much data driven, and enjoy that. And if they enjoy it and it's what they do, first, I think it opens up a volume of volunteer opportunity, because some people, more introvert people, probably be very good at that. And it probably fit perfectly into who they are and how they've been wired by God. But so one, I think it gives volunteer. I think the other thing is, I do think it is an awesome front door of the church. Here's why.
That's good.
I can't even begin to think of how many times I've heard people say in the last 8 months, 9 months, I was watching it online a few times. I just decided to show up. I watched you online. I checked out one of your online services. It used to be I checked out your website. And I think people still do that, but I'm not saying people don't do that. But people check out online before they go to the church. And if that online experience is like outdated carpet and some poinsettia in the background, and the camera's all lopsided, you can barely hear the pastor, you've got a wire, it just looks cheesy. It's like, okay, I think people click right over that, and they look for something that has a little bit more of a professional feel to it, seems a little stronger, is thought. So I do think that's an important part. Now, there's a level of, hey, we have an online pastor.
Right.
We have a guy that's online in there chatting and trying to get people to come to engage, and we have online next steps and online whatever. I'm all for that.
Right.
But, it's not like every church can do it. So I think at the base is we have a great online presence, and we promote our live services the best that we can. And because that online is a new front door to the church. And if someone comes in and says, man, I'll be in the chat room every week and I'll try to, engage people on next steps and have them fill out QR codes or guest cards or whatever, then I'll do that. Then I'll do that. And then I'll expand to this new, all the different things that are expanding that you were mentioning. Great. But let's start with the first foundation is that it is a strong front door of our church.
Yep.
And it's how people judge us on day one.
Yep. And I think you're really hitting an important point there. Is the front door to the church. There should always be that funnel to try to get them from engaging online to engaging in person. And so that's
absolutely
nothing supplements that.
Yeah. No. And again, you kind of like, it's like the iPhone, you see people with those. I just went from a 6 all the way to a 12. But I don't even know what 7, 8, 9, 10, or 11 looks like. But this, for me, the 6 was fine. The 12's a little faster. I guess it does a couple more things, but the 6 still worked. And here's the reason I bring that up is, okay, I think your online service needs to be iPhone 5. It maybe doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but it's good. You watch it, you're proud of it. It's got a little announcement from the pastor, like, hey, don't forget our, if you ever want to check us out in person, we'd love to have you, whatever. It's good. And then, hey, we've got a guy that goes into the chat room and then we've got this online funnel now that we're gathering data and we're promoting, and then, you know what I mean? It's like, It's like an iPhone. It just kind of gets better and better, but at the base, it still has to be good. Right. And I think that look at it as an iPhone 4. It's not a 12 yet.
Right.
But start with a good service because it is an online service, because it is the front door, for a lot of people, it's the front door. And, it is the criteria whether or not they actually step through the door. So make it good.
Oh, it makes a huge difference. And we're seeing that more and more. The first place people come to look before they step foot in the church is your online experience. And so, yeah, that's really good advice. That's great.
Yeah. Start with the iPhone 4. Work your way up. Always good hanging out with you.
Thanks for stopping by today. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and to be on the lookout for more podcasts from Fly on the Wall. See you next time.